like to call the special meeting of the Mount Vernon City Board of Education of April 15th, 2019 to order. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Trustee Patterson.
Present.
Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Williams. Trustee McOwen.
Present.
Trustee Ning. Trustee Jaros. Trustee Saunders.
Here.
Trustee Torres.
Present.
Trustee White.
Present.
Quorum is present. Madam President, I understand we need a motion to enter executive session this evening to receive advice from legal counsels and to discuss matters leading to the appointment of a particular corporation or corporations.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Length to be determined.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Good evening. I'd like to have a motion to reconvene to public session, please.
So moved.
Ms. Torres?
Second.
Trustee McOwen? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. We are back. There are no communications from the public this evening. The date on Facebook is wrong.
It says the night
I don't know what we're doing.
on.
Well, I know we're going to
Pop
finish
up
the
that popped up.
discussion that we had in executive that the public has to hear.
Okay, yep. Do I make a motion to put the resolution on the floor?
No, don't put them
Okay. All right,
till we finish our discussion.
all right. So I have that opportunity for talk under
Oh,
just have a, just so.
just have a conversation. I'm sorry. I'm getting back together.
Okay, I gotta log back in
We're
here.
not going to, until we have the discussion, we can't put it.
So I. How do you want it?
So, what we were doing in executive session, we had some private talks that we had to go over with our lawyer. So now we're here to discuss the Mandela building.
But before we have the discussion, can I just ask Rick, why are 4.1 and 4.2 still locked? Shouldn't they be unlocked?
I've not been told for them to be on. I was waiting for, I usually wait for somebody to tell me to.
All right, well, don't they need to, we can't discuss a resolution that doesn't officially exist.
I, do I, Yep, that's fine.
Just unlock it. So I am going to pull any board members that have something they wanted to remove from the agenda.
Discuss everything first?
That's what I said first, to
That's fine.
discuss.
I actually have some questions about 4.7 also, the recycling program, which is unrelated to Mandela.
Right,
All the other resolutions have to do with Mandela.
Mandela. So let's go into discussion.
Okay, so I'll pull 4.7. We can talk about that after. That's fine.
Okay, pull.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Regard to trustee McGowan's pulling of the recycling. Michael is not here, and if you have questions about that, it may be that we can't answer them. And we're
Okay.
thinking that if you have questions, we should defer that to next week.
We can talk about it after, though. It's all right, I already pulled it, and if you can't answer my questions, then we'll postpone it.
We'll
It's fine.
table it.
That's no problem. Either way.
Table it.
That's fine, either way.
It's no problem. So I know we have some questions about the Mandela Project. Darcy, you want to start?
No one else wants to start, right? Well, I had a question about if the architects had looked at the pickup and drop-off and the traffic congestion potential on Gramerton and Lincoln, because what we've experienced in the past few years is maybe we've had, on a busy day, maybe 20 or 30 students in the school, and now we're talking about having 485, and all that goes along with that. So I'm curious if anybody has come up with a solution, where we are with finding a solution. I know we did have some discussions about it, but those are the types of things that I would like to know are resolved before I vote on any kind of resolution.
While you're going up, I'll follow up on that. Do we have any, with all the new construction that's also happening right around there, is there some larger transportation plan with the city? Are they doing anything in that kind of surrounding block area, unrelated to our project, or our proposed project?
Good evening.
By Mandela.
Is your mic on?
excuse me. By Mandela?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Micah?
Yeah.
I don't think it's any
Is there new
project
construction?
right around Mandela.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, there is, at the other
Building.
corner at the park.
Yeah.
Where?
It's on the same block.
By the Y.
Yeah.
Where the Y was.
Oh, up the street.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not just that, where the pizzeria used to be, I believe there's a,
I think he's
I think
building
there's
a
somebody going.
parking lot or something there. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it all ties together, and it's not just kids, it's other people also using that intersection.
Right. I'm currently not aware of any city initiative in that respect, but we can certainly investigate that. I think that's a great point. With regards to what we have looked at thus far for drop-off and pickup at Mandela, we'd identified 3 zones where this could occur. One at the east end of the building by the traffic circle. There's 2 areas in that location. One is the existing drop-off loop that accompanies the traffic circle. We will be continuing to reach out to the city to see if we can utilize that zone that typically is used by the police department, since it is immediately adjacent to the building and would get the traffic outside of the vehicular traffic lane. Further is the area immediately adjacent to the exit at the east end of the building. There's a series of parking spots at this location where we're looking to utilize some of that and establish that as a drop-off zone, if not full-time, then for a period of time that we could establish with the city for a portion of the day for pickup and or drop-off of students. Lastly, on Fifth Avenue, on the west end of the building, we are making provisions as part of our IT and security project to implement access control so that we can utilize potentially that exit or that entry of the building for student entry and drop-off, since that's more of the residential end of the site, and would allow for potential drop-off of students.
So,
That end
but
of the
those, but that street has cars parked on both sides.
Right,
But-
we would have to establish, again, probably a time period where parking would not be allowed at that, those 4 spaces at the end of the building,
Right.
that we could then utilize that zone for.
So what happens with the drop, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that before it became Mandela, it was Columbus School, which they had about 400 kids. And I don't know what they did at that time for parking, but they survived for many years over there in that area.
What about bus access? Is there enough room for buses?
I'm sorry?
I said, on Fifth Avenue, for example, it's big enough for cars, is that big enough for buses?
It's a one-way street with parking on both sides. I have not heard that there's the inability of a bus to get through there.
Special ed kids or whatever, I mean.
Right.
You need access to.
But if we can, we hope we can get that part from the city to come
Right.
around that enclosed part. It's already enclosed.
That property belongs to someone. I don't think, where the circle, where the pharmacy was?
Yeah, not the, but it's you have to see, it's a second way, it's 2 ways out of there.
usually there's a police officer on the right when
Right
you're
here.
going through. If you notice, there's generally a police officer kind of tucked
When you're
into
going
the-
south?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he or she, let me not be.
That property back there belongs to someone. You guys talked about encroaching on that property?
No.
Those are the areas we're looking at. And we can report back if we hear anything additional from the city.
But what's the right, at what point would you have that discussion?
we
Well,
can.
when we
I
know
think
if the
there's been
building's
some level of
going-
discussion thus far, but I'm not, I don't have,
Those discussions would begin immediately upon approval of the project.
Have any discussions been had preliminarily with the city?
On this specific topic.
No?
I live around the corner, and my children went to that school at the time. It was Columbus Elementary. And now, I used to work there, so I don't really remember what the traffic was at the time, but I don't think it was as bad, because at the time, we didn't even have the roundabout. It wasn't there, so it was like lights.
They had gotten rid of the roundabout.
No, the roundabout was
Wasn't
new.
there. Yeah, it was
It wasn't there, it's new. It's really relatively new.
It used to be there, then they
It used to
got
be
rid
there?
of it,
Yeah.
and then
Right.
they put it back.
Maybe they are, right, that's what
They made it
happened.
larger. It was very
Yeah.
small before. It's just
Right.
a statue.
Yeah, there was a statue.
Yeah, the statue.
That's right.
Exactly.
I'm reminded that Mr. Felicio has had some discussions with the city having to do with the police cutout and the balance of that space in front of the east end, as well as Fifth Avenue parking. So there has been some discussion.
Okay,
but
great.
There's been nothing definitive resolved.
Right, there's no resolution.
Okay.
Darcy, any more?
I want to know if other people have questions. I mean,
Any questions?
I don't have questions so much as I have comments that I want to make
Statement?
about
Sure.
I want to make a statement just in general about this project. And this is something that, I know that the Mandela renovation is something that has been a primary part of the 2020 vision, and we recognize its necessity, especially as we anticipate increased growth in our student population. My concerns revolve around the budgetary impact that this project will have on the district's finances, especially because after a second round of bids, the amount is still something that we do not have for the full remaining funds in the bond for. And I'm concerned of the potential impact going forward if we move to award these bids now and approve this now, because we're essentially committing to something that we do not have the funds for at present. And that gives me cause for concern, and I think it's something that I think our board should consider, so.
I have concerns, however, I feel that right now, what we need right now is Mandela. That's my opinion, that we need Mandela right now so that we can complete the 2020 vision. And I know we don't have the money to say we can put our hands on it right now, but I think we have talked about it a lot in the communities, and the public knows that we were supposed to build Mandela, get Mandela back on the board.
And I understand that, I think, but that was before we
Before we-
received the second bid that came in above what we had
Above.
anticipated. Our budget was 18 million, and we've already exceeded the maximum cost allowance, right? And we already short, so we're going into a project already
Sure.
knowing we've got a shortfall. I don't know, so I just thought it's something we need to think about.
I'll just make a statement, and that is, I don't feel I have enough, I don't feel there's enough that's nailed down. And I understand it's hard when you're working with the state and you're working with the city and you're trying to figure things out, and we're trying to also go as fast as we can to be able to alleviate some of the crowding in some other pre-K to 8 buildings, and rush to accommodate this huge influx of students that hopefully is going to come, and we can handle it in the pre-K to 8 mode in the next sector in the next couple of years. But I still don't feel I have enough information to make a positive determination on this. And I also agree that if you don't have the money, you don't make a commitment to spend it. And I won't do that, and I'm a big believer in not having too much debt personally, or even having any. And so I don't feel comfortable with the information I presently have and the details that are not yet worked out.
The only thing that's really different from October is that the money situation, because we had discussed Mandela completely, I mean, over and over and over again. Now that we have that the bids did come in, and they did come in over than what we expected. I still think we need Mandela. And I'm afraid of the money. I'm a little afraid of not having the money.
Well,
But
I agree.
step out on faith.
Yeah. Okay, I'm a fiduciary. I was elected to be a fiduciary.
I am
So
too.
I don't operate on faith, I operate on facts.
I operate on facts also, and faith.
That's all, I
I
have
just,
nothing else to say.
I think part of it, and I think where the comfort existed in October and now does not exist today, is the fact that we're so much higher than
Than
the
we-
MCA.
I
If
understand
we
that.
were even remotely, I think ultimately if we
Close.
were remotely close,
This wouldn't
I
have been
don't
an
think
issue.
this would be a conversation. I think the concern is that now twice we've gone out to bid, twice that number has come in dramatically higher than we've anticipated, and now the point has come where, and as Trustee Torres stated, we're now gonna have to
Think of where the
put
money's coming
money,
from.
well, now it's not as easy as this is coming from the state, this is coming from somewhere. Now suddenly this is coming from the taxpayers. This is coming from us. And I think that's where, that's what causes the momentary hiccup, or that's what causes everyone to, stutter for a moment. That's not to say that it's not a good idea, and it's not to say that's not the idea that we're going to have. I will say, and something that we were discussing inside, is that we've got this chart by BOCES, and just for everyone who does not have access to it, it's actually, they're saying we're going to have an extra 915 students in the 23-24 school year.
That report is public.
I don't know if anyone who hasn't
It
seen
is.
it or who has seen it. And it's something else that we also have to think about as well, thinking about where are we going to put those 900 students. And this would be a first step to that. I think part of the other concern that arises for me is that we don't have a second step. And I tend to be very linear in my thinking, and I think when we're talking about step one and suddenly we're potentially running out of funds, how are we ever going to take a step two if we don't have the funds to complete step one? I think that's
So-
where the,
So can I ask, excuse me, my throat just.
I know, don't worry.
It's that time of year.
If we do not do Mandela, what other options do we have? What are we going to do? We have to do something.
We
So
have,
What are we
yeah,
going to do?
we have to put somewhere.
So what are we going to do?
Madam President, can I ask Mr. Silver to respond to that, please?
Yes.
I'm standing right here waiting. That's true, we do not have a commitment in writing for the $3 million for the smart bond. We are hoping as of today that it will be $4 million that will be approvable. But I want to have you understand the facts of what will happen if we wait until whenever the smart bond is approved by the state. The bids will be gone. The contractors will have moved on to other jobs, and we will then have to bid again if we decide to proceed. Those bids will surely be considerably higher than they are now, and even with the smart bond and the higher bids, we will not be able to do this project.
So you're saying.
So whether
that
it's,
would be
whether we
another-
get 3 million or 4 million from the smart bond, or whatever we get, it will not be enough to do this project if we do not do it now, because there will not be enough money. For sure, this will be premium bidding, because all of these contractors will just throw in something, and they'll all be working, they'll all have met their quota, and this will just be something extra for them. Just so you understand the facts, it's true we do not have it, but if we decide to do it, wait till the smart bond comes through June 5th, and we go out to bid again, you will not be able to do this project.
Excuse me, Mr. Silver, can you give us an estimate of how much each trailer, if we decide to put trailers on Columbus,
Well, wherever we need them.
Or
Where we
wherever
can
we
fit
need
them, I
them.
guess, yeah.
probably Columbus,
there's
how
two-
much would
there's-
2 trailers on Columbus? I know we're putting 2 on Trapegan already.
I can only speak from the exact costs having to do with Pennington from a couple of years ago. We were paying $73,000 a year for the 2 classrooms. That was the lease portion of it and was covered by the bond. However, the installation of it was a great cost, far more than the leasing of it over a few years, because we ran into rubble from the construction of Pennington. We don't know what we will run into here, but that costs somewhere around $300,000 to install them. That included the electrical, the plumbing, the waste lines, the security, the covered walkway. So that's the big expense, is the installation. Now, it is covered by the bond for what we're planning right now for the two modulars, but if we were to go to more, we would have to reevaluate where that would be. I mean, there would be bond money left, and I think it would be aidable, but then we would have this $2 million that we've spent on Mandela that we would not get aid on. And so
If I
we,
can interject, Madam President, the trailers currently at Pennington and the trailers we're anticipating at Trapp, those are considered to be temporary structures
Right.
pending the completion of the Mandela site. If we were to forego the Mandela site and have trailers as the alternative, they would no longer be considered temporary without a plan to move forward. I would be very concerned about the optics that that presents for the district and the city to have these modulars become a permanent fixture in the district when we're trying so hard to improve the aesthetics of the community. I think that will reverse the course that we're currently on in terms of the beautification of our buildings, making the district more attractive. The trailers, unfortunately, have a different kind of connotation in terms of the aesthetics of the district and the community, and I think having a plan to make the modulars a more long-term use to house our students, I think will actually be regressive for us. That's just my view.
Yeah, do you think they'd have to be long-term? I mean, could they be 2 or 3 years? Is that long-term?
I think absent the Mandela site,
we'd have to have a plan
we're then
for-
looking at
of some
going
kind.
with building another school someplace else, for example, or adding addition. That becomes that does become more long-term than it does a 2-3 year project, because it takes at least 5 years to build a new site, and then we would have to start the process for additions if we were to do that. And so that would probably be a 3-4 year project at this juncture.
maybe we could touch on that for just a moment, Dr. Hamilton. If we were to look at at an addition to either Columbus or, what was it, Holmes?
Homes.
Or Holmes, we would have, for one of those, we would have 11 classrooms for one of those,
Yeah, we talked about
where we have 22 classrooms at Mandela. We would have over $2 million would not be aided in either one of those projects, and you can see that if you have the paperwork that was sent to you. It's on the last page, a comparison of Holmes, Mandela, and Columbus. There would be several $1 million that would not be aided in either one of those projects, and then we would not have the Mandela aided. So you would be talking about some $4 to $5 million in unaided money if you were to go to an extension on either one of those buildings.
What it means is the cost of not doing it now will be much more expensive as we move forward. And academically, it will cost us academically too, moving forward, just because we will be putting children in trailers for how many years, or trying to accommodate them in one way or another. I believe that we are all fiduciaries, but we are also all responsible for the education of the children, and I believe that we all believe that. That's the reason why we're here, and that's the reason why we're having this discussion. So to me, that's what primes, what goes on top. And again, according to your estimation, if we wait not to do it now, it will cost us more regardless. So we don't have the money, but we are confident, or we are hopeful that those 3 million to 4 million will be aidable by the state. So
Well, that would not be an aidable, that would just be the grant. There would be no cost to that smart bond.
So we've invested already much more. This will derail the cost, the vision, the 2020 vision, the K through 8, almost every single academic level, especially, because of how those 4 elementary schools around Mandela, Pennington, Hamilton, it will have impact on every single school academically. So.
Can I have a turn? All right. First, I want to just say to my fellow board members and also to the public that I respect everyone at this table, and I appreciate that, I don't know if every single one, but I know many of our board members have had many, many discussions on the side with Dr. Hamilton, with Mr. Silver, with many people about this very topic. We have met as a board several times about it. I think everyone here I have seen demonstrated that they take their role seriously, and we all know we are fiduciaries in every sense of the word. That's spending dollars now and planning for dollars in the future. I also know that I have full faith in my fellow board members that whatever happens tonight, it won't change one thing about how we work together or how we meet in future meetings. And whatever the decision of the board is, it will be, and it's a board decision. It's not a decision of any one members or 5 members of us or whatever. That's not how it works, and I think we're all very good about remembering that. I also want to say that this board has now met twice and passed 2 resolutions specifically to move this project forward, at least to the bid stage, which is why the administration went through the bid process and spent the money to do that. I want to be clear that we are fiduciaries always, every day, and we as a board are in no way bound by stuff we've done in the past, or what other board members have voted on in the past, or what the board did 3 years ago, or what we even did at our last meeting. We have reserved the right to change our minds and do what we think is best for the community. If that means stopping a project midway, that's what it means. If it means continuing a project, that's what it means. And that's our job, and that's why we were voted here to do this. So I do not feel beholden to my own past votes or the votes of this board. Every time we come to a board meeting, we look at the facts as they are and as they're presented to us, and we make our best judgment that we can at the time on how to move forward. So I respect the fact that we've come this far. I respect the fact that we've had both public and private executive sessions and a whole retreat, private board retreat, specifically to talk about this thing, this specific project. But every time we talk about this project, I, for one, I look at it again with fresh eyes and try and think, okay, I used to say it was the best decision. Do I still think it's the best decision? And I think we all do that. As far as what we do now, we have gone through this whole process with the understanding, I believe it's a unanimous understanding, that we believe that we need more seats in a few years. We're going to need more seats for kids. We have this whole study we commissioned. That's why. Oh, we lose Ken?
I'm back, thank you.
Andy's back. So that's the baseline understanding we have. The understanding we have, based on the expert advice we have paid for and received, is that this district is growing. It was growing even before we made the improvements we've made. So theoretically, if all of our wildest dreams come true, that the work we put into the 2020 vision will result in possibly, you can't predict with certainty, but possibly even more kids coming back into the district in a few years' time. And hopefully the tax base will grow with it. So that's the assumption we have that we're working off of. And if that's true, and that's the assumption we're working off of, then we have to decide how we're going to provide the seats. And there's only 4 ways we can do that, right? We can either renovate an existing building we have. We can add 1 or 2 or 3 or 7 additions, right, at multiple buildings. We can do trailers, temporary or permanent or whatever, somewhere at buildings that have the ground space to hold the trailers, which are not all of our buildings, only a few. Or we can buy a whole new property and build a whole new building. Those are the only options, right?
But we don't have money.
So, I'll get to that. I haven't said anything yet. I've been saving it. This is I got the floor right now. Until somebody elmows me.
You're not going to get out.
So we got 4 options. We got 4 options. We renovate Mandela and keep the existing 17 buildings we have, right? Or we build an addition Now, when we went through this whole vetting process in October, we had a presentation, and the estimate, so we talked about where does the question that was put to administration, and the report we got back was, from the board, was, okay, if we wanted to do one or more additions, where would those make sense, right? Or would be the cheapest, most efficient place to do that? And the answer we got back was Columbus and Grimes, right?
Columbus
Sorry,
and
Columbus and
South
Holmes. No, Columbus and Holmes.
Holmes?
Columbus and Holmes.
Holmes was it?
So we got the estimate to do that. And my recollection, that's somewhere in these papers, is it was, Mr. Sogn, it was like 40 million, 30-something million to do both. Right, and the total classrooms that would get us would be 18 or something? That's the 22, right, it was the same, it was 11 each, assuming you did 11 classroom addition. Right. Right. That's right. That's the report we did, and that was public, and we talked all about that. So that was the second option. We also had factored in there an estimate, which is of course just an estimate about savings in overhead cost, right? By not having by not reopening one of our schools. The third option of trailers, if you were to do 22 trailers to get the same 22 classrooms, that would be astronomically more than either of those two options.
We would need 11, because.
Oh, they're two per, each is two?
So
Ah, okay,
11
okay, got it.
trailers,
So 11 trailers, if we got 11 trailers instead of doing the addition. And that would be cheaper for the first year or two, but then very quickly it would get much more expensive in the long run. So we have to think long-term with these investments. And of course, the fourth option is buying a new building somewhere, or buying a new piece of land and building a new building, either converting an existing building or building a new building from the ground up, which is often cheaper in the long run, new construction. And just real quickly, what are the, I know there's when you buy a new school property nowadays, there's minimum like acreage, right? How does it work?
10 acres.
10 acres? That's the minimum? What if you bought an existing private school or something and converted it? Can you do that?
That's conversion, not new.
That's conversion, okay.
So you buy another building and renovate
All
that.
right. Well, unless we're going to turn Memorial Field into another school, we ain't buying 10 acres in Mount Vernon. That doesn't exist.
I don't think there
10 acres does not exist.
Sounds good, half
Okay,
acre,
so the only option would be to
one-room classroom.
convert an existing private school.
So I'm just reminded that under the same maximum cost allowance MCA, you can't buy land and build at the same time. Plus, then what happens to the old Mandela building?
Well, forget about that for a second. Buying land isn't an option. 10 acres do not exist. It does not exist. So it would have to be, we'd have to buy a private school or a church or some kind of building, and convert it or something. Which is for sure going to be more expensive. So we go through this analysis. I went through the same analysis last summer when we started this conversation, and last September and October, and again in December and January when we talked about it. And to me, I look at this, and of the four options, this seems like the most logical. And if the administration had come to us and estimated that the cost would be $23 million last October or last December or last January, whenever they came to us with that estimate, I would have gone through the same analysis and I would have reached the same conclusion. I don't see how any of the other three options are better than this option. Do I like it? No, I don't like it. I would love to close Mandela. I mean, for purposes of saving admin overhead and long-term savings, but if we're going to have 900 new kids or 1,200 new kids or even 400 new kids in a few years from now, if that's the assumption we're working off of, which I understand it is, then of the four options we have, this seems to me the most logical. And that would be, like I said, if you'd come into the same exact presentation with the two additions, it would have been 22 classrooms for 40 million versus 22 classrooms for 22 million, instead of the presentation we got, which was 40 million versus 18 or 18.7 million or whatever. So it would be a very different story if the bids had come back at 30 million, right, or 30 plus or whatever, and then I would take a serious look and say, okay, whoa, if that's the case, then if it's a pretty much the same price as doing an addition, then we should look seriously at doing additions and save the admin overhead, and there's another option here. The bids came back more than we thought they would for this revamped plan, but still significantly less than the other options that I'm aware of. So based on that, I look at this, and I'm trying to think through this. So if that's the cheapest option, then we have a choice. I have a choice. Do we do it now? Do we wait 2 months or 6 months or a year? And I do, from my own profession, I agree with what I've heard from Mr. Silver and the team that because of the timing of when you do bids, the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. And the timing of, if you do bids during the summer, that is the peak time, and it will absolutely 100% cost more than the bids are right now. It will. And that's a decision we all have to make. Do we do it more expensive later, or do we do it for the price we have in front of us now? Or do we do one of the other three options? And I think those are the only choices that I see here.
Anyone else would like to comment? I know Melissa.
Look at that smile.
So I had a few questions first regarding the bid itself. I know that we had 2 bids. Do we know what the differential was overall, not particulars?
You're talking about the GC bids specifically? Which part of the bid? Oh, I'm sorry, you mean the first bid as a whole versus this bid?
No, I mean this particular, I know that, so I have this total that I was given, and I want to know what the differential is.
I'm not sure what the question is.
Differential in what way?
Weren't there 2 that came in?
Two,
2 bids came in for this particular round? Yeah,
Number of bidders?
2 bidders, I thought.
For each prime.
Yes. So for
Take
the
the mic.
GC,
Yeah, use the mic.
Can be.
Ken Poyman. Yeah, another
Oh,
Ken.
you're kidding. Ah, that's
Oh,
right.
no.
From Peter
we're totally starting a whole Ken thing here.
So-
I can't.
Because it's a Wix Law job, we have 4 separate prime contracts that
Correct.
we
So for the
bid.
GC,
So the
what is the price
GC,
differential
we had
between the 2?
four bids come in.
Okay.
And I'll just, in quick terms, the base bids ranged from about 11.9 to about 14.4. Then we had, next was the mechanical contract, and we had, looks like we had 7 bids come in for mechanical. Those actually were pretty close in numbers in general terms. Third contract was plumbing. We had 5 bids for plumbing. And then electrical was the 4th, and we had 5 bidders for electrical.
So can you provide me the range for the mechanical, the plumbing, and the electrical?
So mechanical, just looking at this, it looks like they ranged from, the low was about 2,450,000, and the high number looks like it was about 3,500,000, rough terms.
Wait, that doesn't, the one we have here, it says the plumbing bid is
Oh,
1194.
this is mechanical.
That
No,
was
we're doing
mechanical.
mechanical.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misheard you. I'm sorry.
Plumbing.
I'm sorry,
Different
okay.
Yeah, plumbing, as you know, the low bid was about 1.7, 1.8 roughly, and the, actually, I'm sorry, got the wrong one here.
I think you're doing electrical, right?
1.3, right? And the high one was, we actually had somebody at 1.7 million,
For plumbing?
right? Yep.
Because our plumbing here is,
Yeah, the low bidder was about 1.2,
okay,
That's, right, that is the one, okay.
yeah.
yeah. Not for plumbing. Yeah,
1194 is
right.
Correct.
Yeah,
And that's, yeah, the low bid. And then the high bid in that plumbing was almost 1.8 million
okay.
for the range. And
then the
finally,
electrical?
for electrical, and really just looking at the base bids, the low base bid was around 1.85.
And the high?
And the
Yeah,
high
Kelly.
bid was 2.0 million.
2.6.
And did you already say the GC range? I missed it if you did, sorry.
GC
It's
range.
11 to 14.
14 was the high?
Yeah, yeah, 14,500,000 roughly was the high number.
And 3.5.
Remember, that's
14,
before all
15,
the
16, 17.
deductions and additions
Right.
to the base bid.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
For the construction, we actually had, I want to say at least 10 alternates I'm looking at, maybe more. It's probably closer to 12, 13 alternates, both adds and deducts as a way to either.
Talk into the mic.
Sure, we had about 13 alternates, adds and deducts for the general construction contract. So in the recommendation, we've actually suggested you take 3 of the deduct alternates. That helps bring the price down from the base bid.
And for this particular bid, we're addressing the boiler and the systems, because I'm assuming the building,
Well, the boilers were actually installed new as part of the EPC contract.
that's
so
what I
we're-
was
That's
we're
right.
keeping them.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
great.
What were
We're
some,
doing-
sorry.
Most of the other mechanicals are being redone as part
Mm-hmm.
of this project.
Can you, just, sorry to interject, what were the other alternates that were considered?
Well, the 3 that we're recommending are all deducts. The biggest one was there's a small play area where we had designed it with a synthetic turf play area, and the deduct alternate was to provide sod in lieu of the synthetic
Right.
turf. So that was one of them. Another one that we're recommending is we had metal tree grates where we have new trees, and there was quite a bit of a give back. It was about $40,000 to take the deduct alternate. And I think the third alternate that we're recommending, the deduct, is for trees, shrubs, and ground cover. That could always be done differently. You could hire your own independent contractors. So there was a savings of about $35,000 on that alternate.
Get out the whip.
Mr. Silver, were the windows also part of the EPC?
No, no. So what we did there is the district hired a repair service to take a look and evaluate the windows. We have a report for that and a budget to do repairs on those that really need it. So we built that repair work into the GC package. We asked them to carry the allowance for the repairs, and then they would subcontract to the repair company.
I'm sorry, and one more thing, just in terms of, and I think this goes back to kind of like your point of, where are we? And I'm in a novel place because I wasn't here in the beginning, and I wasn't here, in the beginning of the term either, so, and in retrospect, honestly, if I had known that this is where we were gonna end up, I might have tried to push harder when we did have that meeting in Manhattan, and would have tried to push harder to just at least flesh more out, because I remember clearly sitting here saying, like, I feel like I still don't know where we have the overages, where we have the issues, where we have the seating, where we don't. I know Lincoln because I saw Lincoln. I went into Lincoln, I saw the little 3rd grade class sitting in the library, and I said, whoa, we have kids sitting in the library. That's insane. We have kids sitting in, like, stairwells. That's insane. Yes, I know you need help. I apologize, everybody, for the 843rd time I've been interrupted. But part of, like, what causes me concern is when we do look at this BOCES set of numbers, and I don't know where these numbers came from. I don't know what they were thinking, but the number for this year, we should have been at, we're 400 and something students less than where we're supposed to be, which could potentially be very good for us, because that could mean that ultimately we may not get that. The deluge may be a little bit less than we anticipated, so we may not, ultimately, that step 2 may not be as necessary as a step 1.
Yep.
But when we base decisions on numbers, and I'm a numbers kid, if in case we haven't all, but when we base decisions on numbers that aren't solid, I get really concerned, because now I sit back and I go, wait a second. And that's, of course, what created, and thank you, Mr. Silver, for being very patient, and Kevin and everybody for all my 840 billion questions. But that's what causes, especially me, to go back and start going through all the numbers, trying to ensure that we're on, that all the numbers make sense now. And that's kind of what starts to create that roll-down effect, because we're looking at numbers, and I don't feel like, my concern is that we're looking at numbers.
We lost.
Apparently it's okay. We're looking at numbers that aren't, legit. But I will say that regardless, and going back to Micah's point, regardless, we do have students sitting in stairwells. And as much as I am not a fan of spending money we don't have, and I think if we were in the high school, or if we were in any of our high schools teaching financial literacy, somebody should smack us for teaching that it's a good idea to spend money you don't have. Putting that aside for the moment, I will say that we do need to get those kids out of the stairwells. We need to get the kids, we need to have comfortable learning environments. And that is my current.
Anyone else?
I do want to give one pitch for our financial teachers in the district, because
They
that's what,
should come to our meetings.
please do. But also, but seriously, no, that's what a bond is. That's what we did. We took out debt. We did, to improve our district. And that's what every district does. And it's a mortgage on our future.
Get it?
And every expense we do, to some extent, is a prediction that the New York State, the state of New York does not go bankrupt next year. And the state of New York will keep its commitments,
Knock on wood.
right? There's a lot of assumption and faith that goes into this, this messy volunteer job we have.
Any more questions? Any more discussion?
I just have one question about the, because I'm assuming we're going to a vote. I just have a question on 3.2, and that question was, oh, sorry, 4.2, right. And that is, we talk about how, we don't talk about how we're planning to fund the total cost. And I don't understand
Well,
why.
the resolution, yeah.
I don't understand why that isn't in the resolution. It just says that it says,
Want me to speak to that?
the project exceeds the 18.7 million, and therefore we're approving a budget of, 3 million more than that, but we're not saying where that money's coming from, so I don't it doesn't feel complete. I don't understand, is there a reason for that?
Look on the last page.
They don't.
Last page of what?
Yeah, last page of what?
This is just,
Come on, internet.
it's just the resolutions, there's nothing else there. Everything else are just bids.
Well, this was, your question is, why does the resolution only speak to the contract, the 4 contracts, and not the total cost of the project?
Oh, no, it speaks to the total cost, but it doesn't say how we're funding it.
It doesn't talk about that gap.
Right, it's typical in a resolution to indicate
Where
where
the
the
funding
funds are
comes from.
coming from. Is it coming from budget? What line item is it? Is it a grant? Every resolution we have will indicate where the funds are coming from. No, we're talking about
Yes.
the resolution before us, 4.2, which authorizes
Just
the
the 22.
total cost of 22.3. Yes, that's what we're talking about.
So, I think
18
that
million and 3
the way we could do this, if the board wishes to, would be to put in the anticipated smart bond money of approximately $3 million, and then an additional $1.2 million from the bond to make that whole. So while we're approving the contracts through the bond, there's another $1.2 million that is also from the bond that is not aided. That's what we think will be the maximum, but it could be a lot less. And then $3 million for the smart bond. I can't speak to whether we should include that in the resolution itself. We could say anticipated smart bond funding of approximately $3 million, but it may be more than that. We don't believe it'll be less than that.
Can we just say anticipated other funding and leave it open-ended? So it's addressed, that we're acknowledging we didn't get from 18 to 20-something, and like magic?
That we still have to get those funds.
Sorry.
They're
We
not
can
approved.
still amend this resolution at a later point.
Yeah.
We could say anticipated, or we could just leave it the way it is. I can't speak.
Yeah, but why don't we just say anticipated other funds and leave it be?
It's up here.
So it's addressed, it's there, but it's not.
So our recommendation is to leave it the way it is,
Up here. It's not part
and we'll come back to it as we know more.
Okay.
But we do know that 3 million is what's missing from this resolution, really, because the other 1.2 is from the bond.
I understand.
But it's a negative.
So I think there's an important clarification I'd like to make. Rick and I were just talking as a policy matter of how resolutions are set up. So to be clear, the text of the resolution, that is what is legally binding. It binds the district and it binds administration, and they cannot change what the words say and go against it without a further resolution amending it or rescinding it or something. It is common practice that we see when we do these budget votes, right? When we see a budget line item, a category, is it budgeted or grant or whatever? Rick is reminding me correctly, that is for information purposes, is not technically part of the resolution, and that's why we also have a policy, which we amended last year, I think, about reallocating resources and within budget line items, because if we indicate on every single thing we vote on every day, every meeting, if we included exactly which line item from the budget that came from, we would drown in 150 amendments every single meeting, right? Because those numbers do shift over time. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify. I don't know if that answers anybody's, I don't know if that changes what anybody thinks, but
Got it.
I think I agree that we should not, my recommendation would be to not include in the actual specific words of the resolution, include the specific budget sources, because then if it changes again for some reason by 1 penny, we're going to have to do this whole discussion all over again and vote again and figure out what to do. To the extent we want something to be binding on the district in terms of where the funds come through, then we should put it in the text of the resolution itself. But once we do that, it is seriously binding. And some of the flexibility that has occurred with other projects that we've done for the past few years, for example, things like we'll have something budgeted, and then, through a lot of work with discussions with SED, through work with the architects or whatever, they'll find a way to legitimately and legally include it within the bond, right, or include it in another bond or something. That's the kind of movement that happens sometimes with all projects, small or large.
Any more discussions?
Dr. Hamilton's gone again.
You gone again? He's here. Oh, he's just listening.
There he is.
There he is, okay. He turns the picture off every time he takes a bite. Am I right? Am I right?
He outed
I'm right.
you.
I called it.
Okay, can we?
You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute. Can you hear me?
Don't make him choke on his food.
That's right.
Are we ready?
We're missing a trustee if we're done discussing.
Okay, we're done are we done discussing? Everyone had their voice heard? Okay. So are we ready to approve the consent agenda except for 4.7?
Let's,
No, you have to pull 4.2
4.2.
and 4.1.
Save, that's what I missed. Okay.
Oh, you have to pull them off the consent agenda.
4.1 is off the consent agenda.
if we're pulling 4.1 and 4.2, I suggest we pull everything then, because I don't see how we can vote on 4.3, 4, 5, and 6.
You're right.
Without 1 and
You should pull
2.
everything.
Okay, and then didn't we just go over the discussion of 4?
Is your point you want to vote on each one individually? Is that what you want to do?
Because we just had the discussion on 4.1 and 4.2.
I know, but I don't want it on the consent agenda. That means we're all voting yes.
On everything.
Is that right? I'm not voting yes on everything.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Okay,
So there's no consent agenda.
correct.
Okay.
None.
So it's the same agenda, we just vote one at a time instead
One
of
at a
everything
time.
together. That's right.
Okay, may I have a motion for, you have to say that.
4.1 rescinds a resolution dated November 5th, 2018, authorizes revised design and renovation of the existing Mandela building. We need a motion to rescind. Trustee Jaros. Second. Trustee
Dr.
Ning.
Ning.
All those in favor of rescinding the motion of November 5th, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
Trustee Miller opposes. Abstain? Oh, I did this the wrong way. Try that again. Trustee Miller's opposes. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Trustee Miller, abstain. The motion carries.
4.2,
Motion.
Motion.
Trustee Saunders.
Second.
Trustee Miller. All those in favor of approving an authorization of a building project at the Mandela Building?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed?
Trustee Miller opposes, and Trustee Torres? Any abstentions?
I guess. That's, yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I missed that whole thing. Yeah, I'll.
Wait, is that, yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know what you did.
I was doing headphones at the time.
my
I'm.
We're on 4.2.
I know where we are. Cecilia, please. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, I'm
In voting in favor?
abstaining.
You're abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
Ms. Patterson abstains. All right. Motion carries. 5 yes, 2 nay, 1 abstention.
4.3, I'm sorry.
That's okay. 4.3, authorization to award bid B18.22, mechanical contract number 2 to Bertucci Contracting, Inc. for addition and alterations at the Mandela School. Motion? Trustee Jaros.
Second.
Trustee Saunders. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed?
Trustee Miller is no. And Trustee Torres is no. Abstain? Motion carries. 4.4 motion, authorization to award bid B18-22, plumbing contract number 3 to TWP Plumbing and Heating for the addition and alterations at the Mandela School.
Motion.
Trustee Saunders.
Second.
Trustee McOwen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed?
Trustee Miller and Trustee Torres. Abstain? Motion carries. Motion to approve 4.5, authorization to award bid number B18-22, electrical contract number 4 to Talt Electric for addition and alterations at the Mandela School. Motion?
Motion.
Trustee White.
Second.
Trustee Jaros. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Trustee Miller opposes,
Opposed?
and Trustee Torres opposes. Abstain? Motion carries. And 4.6, authorization to award bid number B18-22, general construction contract number 1 to Piazza Inc. for additional alteration at the Mandela School. Motion?
Motion.
Trustee McOwen?
Second.
Trustee Saunders? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Trustee Miller?
Opposed?
Trustee Torres? Motion carries. Abstain? All right. That's it. And my understanding is we're tabling 4.7, the RFP for the recycling program.
Well, we're going to look at,
I will move it to the floor for discussion.
Trustee McOwen has made a motion to approve it. Is there a second?
second.
Trustee White.
So I apologize. With all the Mandela stuff over the weekend, I just literally didn't have time to read this 30-page backup. So what is this program? What are we doing? These two schools. Sorry.
I recommend we table this till next week.
I'm fine with that.
I agree.
It's table.
Got it.
The person who's,
I will have time to read it next week.
yeah, yeah, and
This
he's the
might
one
be
who's
back
championing
to
this,
it.
right?
Yes.
I'm all for recycling in the schools.
Yeah,
My
absolutely.
Eagle Scout project when I was a kid, I was the first to put recycling bins in all my county parks. That was my Eagle Scout project many, 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 many years ago.
Not
So,
that many.
Not that many.
but I
that.
haven't read the material, so I'm not going to vote on it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, there's nothing else to say. This meeting is adjourned.
Motion.
Motion.
New business.
We can still say no.
We have new business?
I don't know, you can't bring up new business.
Not at a special meeting. No.
I didn't see it.
Adrian, she's getting
Wait,
cute.
what happened?
She's getting cute.
Second. Trustee White made a motion.
Second.
Trustee Patterson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone, for preparing
Thank you,
for a
thank you,
special
thank
meeting coming on a non-normal night.
I hope,
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton.
I hope we can all move past this.